open the book study to YouTube and bringing you in to get your favorite seat in the house, get your cup of coffee, whatever you're going to be drinking. Open the book study to you. There we go. Ready to go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Pure Presence book study with Bill Free and Jenny Beal. Hello, Jenny.
Hi, Bill. Hi, everyone.
It is so good to be with you each week as we get into this content of Francis's. Oh man, he has a unique and very direct way of presenting the truth. It just feels good when you read it, and how clear he is. And many of you, including, Jenny for sure, and I see Melissa Goodnight is coming in the room. You guys are with Francis on a weekly basis, and I'm not in there. I would be if I had more time. I just have kind of scheduled myself in a way that doesn't give time for that. But I love Francis. Lucille is just a great teacher. I can definitely see why Rupert and Ellen and Jenny and many of you have gravitated, and myself have gravitated to Francis Lucille. He's so clear. And so we're looking if you have the book, we're looking on page 69, halfway down, where there's a question for the questioner about Ramana Maharshi. And before we get into that, I just want to invite Jenny. Is there any place particular you would like to start, or is there anything that you would like to add before we get started?
Oh, let's just start at the beginning, halfway down 69.
Okay. Well, there's a question. Jenny, I'm just going to real quick make you a co-host so you can let people in if I'm talking. There's a question.
Great.
On the questioner says, since we are not independent entities with, what does that say?
With volition and
With
free
volition
will.
and free will, why did Ramana Maharshi suggest that we ask ourselves, who am I? Or who am I? Ask ourselves internally, who am I? And he gave a brilliant answer. You want to complete that, Jenny?
Yes. So he explains that, like most teachers, Ramana is really talking on different levels to people at different levels of understanding. For someone who feels that they are a separate entity, then it sounds like a suggestion to practice self-inquiry. And yes, that's a good idea. That's something that's helpful, because if we really go into that question, who am I? What am I? Well, what is it that is having all this experience right now? Then if we go deeply into that, it brings the mind to a halt. And in that stopping of the mind, then the deeper levels of that question really come in. And at those deeper levels, for someone who's already had a glimpse of their true nature, then Francis is saying, well, this is a reminder of what you are, and to go back to that, and to enjoy that, just to enjoy life and be happy. He says, which is great. And he says, we can travel on the path of the individual, the truth seeker, practicing and seeking, and in parallel on the path of the truth lover, for whom there is no need to do anything. We can move back and forth from one path to the other. But more and more, we remain as a truth lover and forget the truth seeker. And in a recent satsang, he gave a most beautiful illustration of what he means by that. It's really elaborating that into 3 paths rather than 2, in fact. And he says that in the Kashmir Shaivite tradition, then they have there are 3 paths, or really 3 stages of a spiritual path, but you can kind of mix and match them. So one is the path of the individual. So that's where you're doing all these preliminary practices. And then there's what he calls the path of energy, and then there's what he calls the path of Shiva, which is the path of effortlessness. It's the path of knowing your true nature. And the way he described it was like landing an aeroplane. If you're flying an aeroplane and you've reached the airfields where you want to land, then air traffic control is going to put you into a holding pattern for a while, and that's like the path of the individual. So you'll be repeating practices, doing all sorts of practices and repeating them. But then eventually you go around the circuit and you come onto the final approach. So when you get on to finals, that's what he calls the path of energy. And there you're lined up with the runway, you're perfectly aligned with the runway. And that's really only open to you once you have had this glimpse of your true nature. So that's the direct path, the next stage of the direct path, because the first stage is taking you from the path of the individual to finals, and then once you've had that glimpse, then the path of the energy is just letting phenomenal experience be as it is, without grabbing hold of it, without wanting it to be different, without expecting anything, just allowing it to flow as it is. Describes it as being like a surfer surfing the waves also. And then eventually the plane touches down, it goes lower and lower, it touches down, and that's the path of Shiva, and that's the path of being completely at ease with life, enjoying everything that life brings.
Yeah, I like that description. In the beginning, I like how he said that the sage speaks simultaneously on different levels also.
Yes.
And then I also like the description that, there's a you go back and forth, and we all seem to do that. And in the beginning, when we're seekers and lovers, as described by Francis, initially we think we're doing something wrong when we flip over to seeker, and then we have glimpses and we go back and forth because we really haven't stabilized in our understanding as yet. And so I like the way he describes that the sage speaks simultaneous at different levels. In practicing self-inquiry, the mind has a bone to chew on, and the mind becomes quiet as it works on the bone.
Yes, it's really a trick in a way. Yes.
Yeah. And then also, when we are beginning on these with this understanding, it's pretty common for people to think they're doing something wrong when they're not feeling good, or they're drawn into and be involved in the experience, and they really haven't become stabilized in their understanding. So they believe that I must be doing something wrong, and the deeper you go into the the truth, the more sensitive you become to the experiences that were drawing you in. So you think you're really getting worse, and you're actually getting clearer, and it hurts more, faster.
Yes, yes. He describes that on the path of the energies. Then that's where you're falling off the surfboard and into the water, and then you have to get back up onto the surfboard and you surf the waves again. Then eventually the waves take you to the shore.
Well, thankfully, there is, I mean, thankfully, the time that you put into this and your devotion to the truth, it does have a payoff. I know many people that are stabilizing in the truth and able to experience life in a different way. Myself included. Things are they are self-resolving after a while.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, if there's any questions, please use the raise the hand function, and we'll go to those questions at about halfway through. And Rick had written in a question we'll look at when we get to, I think, page 73 or so.
Mhm.
And as we're looking at the next question on page 70, if you're looking at the book, this was really good. This question on meditation and how it was answered. What is the prerequisite for meditation? I just love these two ideas that he offers: intention and attention.
Yes, yes,
Intention and attention. And when I think of intention, I think of this is where, your desire to be happy. Rupert, one of his main descriptions of what's when he did that walk with Bernardo Kastrup in Amsterdam, everyone is looking for happiness, whether it's with some addiction, or to be famous, or egoic activities. Everyone is actually looking for the same thing, which is happiness. And in my mind, the this word intention is like the thing that ignites our search for truth. It's a desire. It's the desire to be happy, which is ultimately it's the desire to know the self, to come back to self-realization.
yes, yes. And he also sometimes describes it as interest, and that it's something you feel you need to investigate further. You need to find out what it is that you really are. What is this universe really? And it's it's something that's very natural in all of us.
Yeah. Yeah, and also the mind can be a bit chaotic and not focused, and intention brings that into uh, a more stable, just like the word says, intentional gives us more of a stabilizing focus. And then this is where we have it seems like we have the ability to choose. We we choose where our attention goes, and that's where this intention has its gives its experience.
Yes, it's an impersonal attention, and I think that's the really important
Yeah.
aspect. It,
He
it
says
needs to be impersonal.
our intention has to be directed towards the impersonal, just what you just said, towards the divine. The intention to get rid of a problem, to solve a psychological issue, to acquire powers, or to become healthy is not the kind required for meditation. Such an intention inhibits meditation. To check your motive, ask yourself, what am I really looking for? What do I really want? You will find the answer in the privacy of your own heart. If the intention is for anything less than the divine, for less than that which is beyond all limitations, there won't be meditation. However, if there is such an intention, meditation is already at hand. It is potentially there.
Yes, yes,
And I've seen, and I think you would be able to speak to this also. Francis is known for taking a question and saying, well, the question itself implies that you're already looking.
yes,
You're
yes.
you're already where you're looking for.
Yeah, yes. And it's not that those other lower level intentions are wrong. It's just that they're not the sort of the highest level of intention that we need for meditation and for what's really most important to us in our lives. So there's no problem with having an intention to be healthy and going out and exercising and eating the right foods. That's absolutely okay. But that's not the most important intention in your life.
Right.
That's the important thing.
Well, what's interesting is when you find yourself giving attention to uh, presence, or stillness or awareness, you find that the movement into those other areas is more natural. Even you may think it's random, but it's actually more of an intentional movement without a doing.
Yes, yes. It things happen by themselves. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
He says on page 71, the second paragraph down, the fixation of the attention can take place within any one of the three realms of experience: the external world, the thoughts, and the bodily sensations or feelings.
Yes, yes. So he's saying that it's when our attention gets fixated on any kind of object, not just a physical object, or not just thoughts that go round and round, but equally just a sense of me in the body. And that's the one that he says is the most subtle and hardest to see. That
Yeah,
you end up with a kind of you don't realize that your attention is on an object, because you kind of land on a blank state, and it's very common for meditators to do that, and they think they're meditating because they've got to peace and silence, but where they've landed, it has, as Francis said, it has no perfume. It's it's boring, and it's just a blank state. And if you look into that, blank state, then what you find, and it can be quite hard to look into that, but requires a kind of relaxation, really. You find that there is a sense of me there, a sense of a localized me, really hidden in the body, and that's one of the things that prevents real deep meditation going right down into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, which is what he's trying to help us to do with this answer. That's the
Right.
sort of meditation he's talking about, is where you're sinking below all objects.
Yeah. Yeah. And what he speaks to here, he says we often seem to reach a place of stillness in meditation. I like where he describes the distinction of localized awareness versus awareness, even though there really is only one awareness. There's seemingly a localized awareness where the body mind has identified itself as awareness. And he says that, however, although it is a quiet place, just as you were saying, it has no juice, no perfume. If we look closer, we see that the mind is in fact resting in a bodily sensation, a localization in the body. And that's a sense where a lot of new, what I've noticed, that people think that they've reached awareness, or they're experiencing awareness as the observer. And oh yeah, I'm aware of this experience, and they mistaken that awareness as what's being talked about
Yes.
in that
Yeah.
idea. He says, don't let your mind rest upon any object. In this sense, meditation requires a kind of vigilance. The only place to rest is the self. This is why, in my mind, when the Course in Miracles talks about be vigilant only for God, it's saying be vigilant only for aware presence, not the object of experience.
Yes, and I think when he says be vigilant, it's really allowing that noticing of being fixated on an object to come to your attention, and then not ignoring it, not saying, oh well, that doesn't matter. Seeing, oh, I'm fixated on an object, that's the object I'm fixated on, and then just letting it go. And it's in that just a relaxation of the tension, because whenever there's attention, there's always a kind of tension associated with it. It can be a very, very subtle tension, but there's always some kind of tension or energy associated
Yeah.
with
And
attention. So it's
and
a
you can,
sinking back of attention, in other
yes.
words.
Yes. And you can feel it.
Yes.
It's a subtle, you can feel when you're I started noticing I don't know, years ago, that disturbance in the, you could say disturbance in the force, disturbance in your peace is it becomes more and more closer and immediate. And in that experience, it's sort of a signal. It signals the tension that you're describing, or something's up. Something that's being given attention to is running the show.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in time, once we get used to this idea, then just the noticing of that tension itself releases it. It's like letting go of an elastic band. It's a very thin, fine piece of elastic, but once you notice it, then it lets go of itself.
Yes, yes, yes. If when one doesn't touch it, as I say,
Yes.
or give involvement to it, it and stays, as Rupert, I've heard Rupert say, just stay imperturbably in that place, and don't touch it. Let it be exactly as it is. Don't, as you said, don't avoid it. Don't, you know, it's not there, right?
Mm.
You fully experience and welcome whatever is occurring, simultaneous to just staying present and aware without involvement.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He says, and this is what Francis says at the bottom of the. I like this last little piece on a paragraph on the page of 70, at the bottom of 71. When okay, so don't let your mind rest upon any object. In this sense, meditation requires a kind of vigilance. The only place to rest is the self. When we create a sensation in the body to rest on, we create a pseudo self, a pseudo me. As soon as we detect such a pattern, we are free. When you become aware of such a localization or attachment, try to make a deliberate effort to move the attention away from it. We do this. This is really critical how this is accomplished. We do this simply by allowing the sensation upon which we are resting, or we're resting, to expand into the surrounding space, or by just going back to unlocalized presence. Although our mind doesn't know where unlocalized presence is, our presence knows very well where to find itself. It is always right here.
Yes. Yes.
It's right here.
I think the expansion method is easier for people who haven't ever felt that sense of localization, because when people first come to this teaching, first they have a glimpse, or probably several glimpses, and then for quite some time, often several years, they still feel localized in their body. And I think the way, or certainly the way I found through that was through expanding that sense of localization, expanding the feeling of me.
Can you give an example of that?
We can do a little meditation on that if you like, briefly.
Yes. Yes, let's
Yeah.
do that.
Okay. Let's do sort of Francis style meditation on that. So if we close our eyes and just allow experience to flow as it is. There's no effort involved in allowing experience to flow, because it'll do that anyway. So thoughts, sensations, perceptions, all of them are welcome. And if we give our attention to the sensation of the head, because very often a sense of me resides in the head. If it doesn't for you, then you can either replace the word head with wherever your sense of localization is, or try it now with the head and then experiment after this webinar. So just allow sensation of the head. Now, we're not talking about the image of your head. With our eyes closed, there's no need to have any image of the head. We're not looking at ourselves on the screen. So the sensation of the head is just an amorphous sensation. It doesn't have any shape at all. It's just a sort of tingling. If we just rest our attention very lightly on that amorphous tingling. So that hasn't got any particular shape, but we could visualize that sort of shapeless mass of tingling. Just first visualize it expanding out 6 inches away in all directions. So visualize the tingling that we call the head, just not the image of the head. That's that amorphous sensation. Visualize it expanding 6 inches in every direction. So if I visualize, I mean sort of creating kind of mental image of that sort of blob of sensation expanding. And now allow the actual sensation to expand into that same space as occupied by your visualization. So the sensation we call the head feels much larger. It occupies a much larger space, 6 inches larger in all directions. It's about 4 times the size. And see that there's nothing holding all those different little tingling bits together. There's nothing holding that as a single sensation in one place. See if you can allow that to expand, that amorphous mass of sensations to expand, to fill the whole room that you're in. Because there is no border to it. There's nothing, it's like a field of energy, pulsating energy, and nothing stopping it, filling the whole room. And it's not affected by the walls of the room. It can expand through the walls. Walls aren't solid. Can expand out into the whole of the universe. So if you feel resistance at any point in allowing this expansion to occur, that's entirely natural. And that resistance is pointing to the sense of me, and you just gradually recognize, try again to allow that to expand. Don't look for any result, don't look for that resistance to disappear. Just notice it and try again. And eventually, when we feel that the sensation of the head occupies the whole universe, then if there was a sense of me inside that head, well, it's no longer there because it's just dissolved into everything. The vibration that was my head has merged completely with the vibration that is the universe. So we can try that same experiment with any part of the body where we feel a sense of me. For most people, it's either in the head or in the chest, but it can sometimes be in other places. So it was a tantric technique from the Path of the Energies.
Thank you. That was awesome. Really important to drop into that experience, and then to add to that, I really liked the gradual expansion, first with the 6 inches, and then to include the room, and it's that gradual um, um, invitation to include everything.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. Let's look at Rick's question. He sent a question over. Are you ready to look at that?
Yes, yes.
He said on page
Let's
73, first paragraph, Francis states, reality appears in accordance with our beliefs. I certainly agree with this statement. However, can you please comment on the last sentence that he suggests the death of the body doesn't imply the end of separation?
Yes. So if we feel that that we are the body, then obviously when the body dies, if we believe that, then we believe that that we die, that we disappear. And so in that case, the death of the body doesn't imply the end of the sense of separation, because always that separation, that sense of separation is there. We never, it never gets resolved. Then if we believe that we are the mind, there are really two possibilities. We might believe that the mind is completely dependent on the body, and the mind disappears immediately the body dies. So in which case exactly the same thing will apply. Or we might, and this is an idealist perspective, we might take the view that actually the body and the world are constructs of the mind. In other words, they appear inside the mind. So in that case, the mind is not dependent on the body, and it's not dependent on the world. But still, if we feel we are an individual mind, and there are many other separate individual minds out there, then there would be an intuition that individual mind is not immortal, that it's going to die eventually. So again, we have not got rid of that sense of separation, that sense that it may eventually die. It might not die at the same time as the body dies. It might carry on in some way, but we would naturally, if we think we are a separate mind, we would naturally think that mind is limited. Is certainly limited. It would be certainly limited in mind space, because there would be other minds having their own mind space. But also, I think there would be an intuition that it would be limited in time. So, in other words, it doesn't get rid of the sense of separation if you feel either you're the body or that you are the mind, not dependent on the body. The only way the sense of separation disappears is the recognition that we are consciousness, that consciousness is unchanging, and that it's the same throughout the universe, or that there are not separate consciousnesses. It's not in any way personal. There is no personal separate consciousness. And if we understand that, then there's a recognition that then obviously that doesn't die, because there is just consciousness. That's all. That's the reality of everything. That all of us share that same consciousness. So one body dying is not going to make any difference to it.
Does that answer that question better for you, Rick? Does that feel right to you? And I would say to
I would say,
follow that. Oh, go ahead, Rick.
go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, it certainly does. It's the death of the pseudo me, the end of the body mind. But ignorance is still free to continue to dance on the stage of life without the pseudo me, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's an addiction that we seem to have. I mean, most people would have the addiction to the personal self because, and this is why we're so attached to the symbol of calling on other, beings, calling on Jesus or calling on the Holy Spirit or calling on God, the name of God. All of these are but symbols that are, that we also have to release ourselves from, to experience, to knowingly know and be the impersonal self that Rupert and Francis is pointing to here. And I think that's one of the hardest. It's one of the hardest ideas to release from, because I only say that because it's the one I see the most. It's the one I see the people have the hardest time. They somehow, you want to have like you want your out of body experience to look like you in this translucent thing. You know what I mean?
Yes, it's the other side. There are really two aspects, two very, very deep roots of this sense of separation. So one is the fear of death, and what you've just mentioned is the other, which is the sense of lack, that we only want something bigger than ourselves. We only want a separate God or a God that's bigger than us, because there's a sense of lack, a very hidden sense of lack. And I think it's such a hard problem, because it can be so difficult to actually find that sense of lack. We can say to ourselves, well, no, I know that I don't lack anything at all. I'm perfectly happy as I am. I don't actually lack anything, but still there is something just hidden there. There's a very beautiful recent video of Anna Nemitz that she see if I can get the title. Yes, it was called The Stone and the Beloved. And this is she talks about that and explains that. And again, that's also about the sense of me in the body, but it's also about the sense of lack, the sense of constriction, the lack of expansion into the universe.
Yeah, Ellen has a gift of taking you to a place that is similar to what we just did, only a much longer practice
Yeah.
of experiencing that full. I hesitate to call it an out of body experience, but it sort of is. It's really it's remarkable. It brings you to that impersonal space, and I think the more we can practice allow that experience, the more we become familiar with the true self.
Yes. It's a dissolving of the solidity of the body, just as we did in a small way with the head, and we dissolved its solidity. Then that's what she does over a longer period, for covering the entire body.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a good there's a description Aaron gave. Said, "I love that. Thank you. The more expansive awareness became, I felt almost like I was falling asleep, but it wasn't that. It just seemed like the body mind went to sleep. Did anyone else have an experience like that?" And if you would like to, anyone would like to chime in, I would say I had similar experience to that. Um,
And that's exactly the idea. Yes, it's the feeling, the sense of being separate, the sense of constriction, just dissolves in that expansion.
yeah, it's very soft, very gentle, very intimate.
Yes.
Yeah. Elizabeth Myers has a question. Would you expand on the wall is not solid and or body in this light of understanding?
Yes, yes. Okay. From a scientific perspective, walls are not actually solid. If we go into particle physics, then we see that walls are made almost entirely of space, and we think they're solid because that's how we conceptualize them. But that's a conceptualization of the mind. And what we were doing in that meditation was feeling that there was no constraint at all. Physical walls provide no constraint to all sorts of radio waves and all sorts of electromagnetic waves, other types of fields, neutrinos that can't come through us. So they provide no genuine barriers, but we imagine they do, and that's. But it's just our imagination, and it comes from our sense of touch. So if we touch a wall, then part of the laws of the universe say that it's not going to budge unless it's built wrong. But generally, it's not going to budge. But that doesn't mean that that it has solidity. So there's no reason why the tingling sensation that is all we really know of the head shouldn't pass through those walls, just in the same way that radio waves or your TV signals can pass through the walls. Anything could pass through the walls.
And that's reminiscent of the idea that when someone comes to your mind, a person or an experience or whatever, you actually have the access to connect with that consciousness even remotely, to just and vibrational frequency of connection will occur.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And what the physicists say is that the whole universe is a set of vibrating fields, which is absolute. There's nothing solid about anything in the universe. It's just a set of vibrating fields.
Yeah.
It's quite amazing. But it helps sometimes to look at it that way, because sometimes this teaching can feel like it's sort of peculiar and not really related to how people normally think. But the highest level of understanding and thought, it's utterly consistent with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And going back to you know, the idea of what happens when the body suit, what happens with consciousness when the body dies, when the bodysuit dies. And when you look at this board here, this screen with, 50 faces on it, awareness is one. The oneness of awareness is, it looks like it has 50 faces, but take away all the faces and it's still the same awareness.
Yes, it's only one awareness experiencing.
Yes, yes. I was thinking of this yesterday. I found that we have a blue heron, a great blue heron on the property that we just bought. And I was communicating with that blue heron, in this real gentle way, because I could feel he was looking at me over there. And I just want to bring in that same awareness that's experienced right here is the awareness that we have with all animals
Yes,
and
yes,
in all things, really.
yes.
At the top of, before we go, we have about 5 minutes left, and there is one question. So we'll look at, Judy has a question. Can we override the sense of lack by doing the expansion meditation more and more?
That it will certainly help, but I think it's also useful to inquire into that sense of lack, and sometimes that sense of lack has some kind of a story behind it, which you can see revolves around a separate entity. And if there is such a story, then it's really seeing through the untruthfulness of that story is important first. But then at some point, the sense of lack, because the sense of lack can be in layers, and the deeper layers of that sense of lack then don't seem to have any story at all attached to it. And in that case, if you can locate that sense of lack in the body, the same way as you locate a sense of me, it will be the same place as the sense of me once you've noticed the sense of lack, that the two will be together. Then absolutely you can expand in exactly the same way, and that will help. But certainly start with, if there's any kind of story attached, start by seeing through that story.
Beautiful answer. Thank you, Jenny, for that explanation. And at the top of page 73, the questioner said, when we die, does any trace of the individual remain? And I loved his answer in the second paragraph when he says, when all these beliefs and images disappear through understanding, that's key, through understanding, they disappear in consciousness, in us. However, we cannot convey through words the actual experience that we, as consciousness, do not die. All that can be conveyed through words is the understanding that there is no logical or experiential reason to believe that the consciousness which is seeing or understanding these words right this moment is personal. The moment we are open to the possibility that it is impersonal, we are, by definition, open to the possibility that it does not die, because it is our experience that whatever dies is personal or limited. However, at this point, it is only a logical inference. It is not an experience. The actual experience that consciousness is not personal and that it does not die. However, it comes to us, could be called enlightenment.
Yes, and he gives this lovely analogy of a safari guide taking you to where a tiger comes down to drink. And that's very beautiful, because he takes you first to that openness, first to that not knowing whether what we are dies or doesn't die. And it's in that openness that there's a chance of that understanding just spontaneously arising, just like a tiger will suddenly walk out of the bush and you see it.
Yeah. Yeah, so go ahead and read the rest of the tiger story is the finish of chapter 5 for this week on page 74. And this has been a beautiful gathering today. Thank you all for being here. Jenny, thank you for that awesome expansion meditation experience. That was fantastic. And love to all of you. Thank you for being with us this week, and we'll see you next week for chapter 6. And Jenny, any final words?
I just the final words from the chapter, I think, are so perfect for us all to take away. Don't expect anything, and you'll get everything.
Nice. Yeah. Don't expect anything, and everything happens.
Yes.
Right there. All right. Love you all. Bye-bye, and we'll see you next week. Don't forget to sign
Thank
up
you.
for the conference, the Awareness Conference, and go to teachersofgod.org or billfree.com for the link.